A dad in Calgary tore down his garage and built a full home in his backyard for about $330,000, so his daughter could finally stop renting. She searched Calgary, Edmonton, the Maritimes, Ontario, maybe even BC, but nothing fit her budget, and the things that did necessarily didn't work out for what they were looking for. So the search ended on his own lot. Headlines are selling this as the solution for multi-generational Canada. Free-ish housing for your kids, rental income, age in place, everybody wins. Except the part nobody leads with is this. The build is the easy story. The financing, the appraisal, the debt servicing rules, and depending on where you live, for example, if you're in BC, well, that changes things. And that's where some parents can be blindsided by this. So today, we're not going on the articles and the headlines. We're looking at rules, cash flow, and the traps, so you know whether this is actually a good fit for you, your family, and your household. First off, here are the rules of the video. We're not doing rate predictions. We're not telling every parent they should build one, and we're not saying that no one should ever build one. We're not pretending Calgary construction costs are the same as somewhere in BC. We're looking at math, carrying costs, and stress tolerance, because that's also something that's very important with this. I'm going to walk you through the Calgary story, what actually changed in Vancouver and BC as a whole, 3 reasons people would do this, the real cost to rent example, then the financing traps most people skip over, and who this may very well not be for. As mentioned, the press just ran the story. I'm not going to say his name. Feels weird to say it on YouTube, even though it's everywhere right now. About a man in Calgary. He was 69. His daughter and son-in-law spent years hunting for a starter home. Their answer wasn't another bidding war or buying a tear-down home. So what he did was pretty spectacular. He tore down his old garage and built a 1,440 square foot 2-bedroom Laneway house, and at roughly $330,000 all in for the project. And that's about $230 per square foot. His line was simple. It's the cost of a nice condo. There's 0 condo fees. And the only strata council is dad. And that's the emotional pitch landing across Canada right now. Parents helping kids, kids close by. Handoff of care when mom and dad get older, being close to grandbabies. But here's the so what. Affordability didn't magically get fixed. A generation got priced out of starter inventory, and a generation of homeowners is sitting on land that already is clearly zoned for this and may have been zoned for this for decades. So the market didn't invent a new dream or reality, it just rediscovered it in the backyard. Now, some history on this program. Vancouver, from my findings, was actually the first in Canada to legalize laneway homes in about 2009. That's almost 20 years of trial and error, where other cities are just starting to roll this out. In 2023, Vancouver actually raised the size pathway, so a laneway can work more like a real family house, up to roughly 2,000 square feet in current city frameworks. So that's about a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom territory, depending on the lot and the FSR. Now, before we get deeper into this, the one critical rule that you cannot skip or move over is that a laneway stays on the same title as the main house. You generally can't stratify this, and if you sell it, you can't sell it separately. It's a bundled package. That single line kills anyone that's looking at this going, I'm going to build a house and make a ton of money. This is not a build a second house and cash out next year. This is a long hold family infrastructure or long hold rental strategy. Province-wide, BC's small-scale multi-unit housing changes also pushed municipalities to allow more gentle density, main home, suite, laneway style forms on lots that used to be single family only. But before you fall in love with a Pinterest floor plan, you need a feasibility check. Lane access, lot width, separation from the main house, fire access, trees, sewer, and of course, water. These are things that all need to be considered before you say you're going to pull the trigger on something like this. Additionally, most people building these are trying to solve one of 3 problems, and knowing which one is the problem is really important because the financing and structure should match the job. The first one is, of course, what this article is about. Housing your adult kids without mixing toothbrushes and, having holdups for showers. It's a separate door, separate kitchen, but same Thanksgiving. The other lane would be rental income, or a mortgage helper, or something to pay off that HELOC you still have at your house, or that small balance, or create that retirement income that you need so that you can retire comfortably. Then lane 3, aging in place. For example, maybe you're in your 70s, you have kids who want to buy a house, but they can't afford it on their own, and you want your family close for that chapter so that you have some people to help look after you, but so that they can go to work and you can maybe help look after the grandkids as well. Like the dad from Calgary said, eventually his daughter's going to inherit the house. And along the way, she helps look after them and they help look after the grandkids. Where we see problems come up is when people are trying to do all three at once with no priority. You build the wrong unit and you finance it the wrong way. Let's look at the hard data and stay honest about geography. The Calgary example in the press, about $330,000 for a 1,440 square foot, including garage and workshop. Well, local incentives may have shaved real money off that file. And somewhere like Vancouver, it could be a completely different animal. All-in project ranges you'll hear from builders and market guides often land more closer to $400,000 to $650,000 for a typical 700 to 1,000 square foot unit once you count for design, permits, servicing, GST, and contingencies. The big thing about this is math doesn't care about the headlines. A cheap relative to a condo story in Calgary can become we just over-leveraged ourselves to build this and can't afford our payments in other cities and municipalities, depending on where you live. Now, let's layer in rent. A finished Metro Vancouver Laneway, well, the rent can swing from anywhere from the high 2,000s to the mid 3,000s a month, depending on the side of town or the finishing done inside the unit. And this is before we factor in things like vacancy, maintenance, a bump in your insurance costs, and the slice of the property taxes you allocate. Let's run a stress framework on this. Suppose all-in costs are $500,000 and the soft rent is $3,000 a month, so $36,000 a year gross. Knock off a realistic operating drag, call it like $6,000 to $8,000 a year for simplicity, and you're looking at something in the high 20s net before debt servicing. Against $500,000 of borrowing costs, that net can be fine or it could be razor thin, depending on rates, amortization, and whether you still need the main house payment to breathe. Hope isn't a mortgage strategy with this stuff. So running the payment scenarios in numbers is the most important thing, even if it makes you slightly uncomfortable. Because at the end of the day, sure, you can borrow the money, but should you? Okay, this is where I'm going to share something that most people talking about this are not talking about. It's counterproductive because I'm a broker. But at the same time, I want to make sure no one falls into some traps. At the end of the day, if you're going to do this, it's right for you, and we want to make sure it's going to work out the way you want it to work out. So let's talk about trap number one, which is the appraisal lag. You can spend $400,000 building this on your lot, but the appraisal may still not see the full value of it yet. And that's because comparables for this could be thin in your area. There may not be many places that have sold that are like this. And in some cases, banks won't even use the value of both homes. They use the value of the main house and the lot up to a certain size, and the other one, they just forget about it. So it puts you in a position where you may not get the value you need. And when you go to sell it, anyone looking to buy it, well, if you're trying to sell it for the value of two houses and the bank's only considering the value of one, you got to hope that person buying has a really, really big down payment. The secondary trap on this is how you borrow the money you're going to use to build this. Most owners fund this through a mix of a HELOC and existing equity, or a construction or draw mortgage, or refinancing the main property. When it comes to construction and draws, they're messy, they're a bit of a pain in the butt. If you have enough equity, it might make more sense to take that HELOC option, because that's going to open up the realm of possibilities, and you can also put yourself in a position where you can separate that mortgage. For example, if you're building this as a rental component and you want to have your mortgage separated for tax purposes, you can do that. If you have your adult kids moving into it and you want them to have their own mortgage payment, you can do that. Looking at the financing and tailoring it to exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it is one of the most crucial things about this. Because if you set it up wrong, the only way to reset it is refinancing, legal fees, appraisal cost, potential penalties. So getting it right the first time is really, really important. And the third trap, and the reason I think everyone should talk about this before you ever pull the trigger on something like this, is the debt service and combined application picture. If your kids are on title on the mortgage, yes, we're going to use their income to qualify. That's fantastic. But on the flip side of that coin, their credit and other obligations come with them. If they're a tenant only, you may get a partial rental add back depending on the lender rules and regulations and guidelines, but there's no magical 100 cent on the dollar from day one. So before you break ground or do anything, you need to speak to someone about qualifying debt servicing and how it's going to look with the full application, whether that's with the kids on it or with using it as rental income. The next trap is when you split the payment, but you don't set yourself up to split the payment effectively or properly. There are multi-generational and family-structured lending concepts where more than one borrower can sit on title, and you can each have your own individual payment for that total mortgage, basically breaking the mortgage into multiple portions so that the kids have their payment, the parents have theirs, and you carry on as is. There's also lots of different financing options, such as secondary suite refinance pathways and low-rate government programs, but those come with caps and the numbers can move on them and the eligibility can be quite picky. When it boils down to it, you want to make sure this is structured properly. I'm not going to rattle off product menus like it's some kind of Rolodex, but what I will say is structure has to match the occupancy. Kids as owners of the property is completely different than kids as a renter, and you want to make sure that mortgage is set up in a way that's conducive to how you're running the property. The next trap we want to talk about is liquidity. It's the same title, but it could be a harder sell and you could have to hold on to it for longer. For one, like I said before, sometimes lenders aren't going to use the value of both properties. They're going to use the value of the main house and the lot itself up to a certain size, not including the value of the other home that's built on it. So if someone wants to buy this property, they need to come up with a large down payment or they're just kind of out to lunch. The other thing we consider is the appraised value of it. When we look at appraisals, they use comparable sales in your neighborhood. So if you're the only house in your neighborhood with a Laneway house, that could damage your appraised value based on the fact there's no comparable sales that can be utilized. So it is something that we want to look at as a long-term generational holding pattern, not something where, hey, I might try and sell this in 24 to 36 months. If that's your plan, then this might not be for you. So I'm commonly asked, who is this for? Is this for me? And I think it's easier to say who it's not for. So you have to be blunt with yourself. This is not for you if your lot fails lane access, if the width of the lot isn't there, or if trees are not a reality, you can't clear them cost effectively, or maybe you're not allowed to clear them, but you're still trying to force this anyways. It's not for you if you need a project to appraise dollar for dollar the week after the electrician leaves. It's not for you if the only way the payment works is in best case rent scenarios. You want to factor in things like the idea of vacancy, maintenance, and costs of owning the additional property. And with the understanding that rates don't only go in one direction. It's not for you if your family dynamics are already on fire and you think a shared driveway is going to fix them. And it's most certainly not for you if you're already struggling or underwater on your main property and you're trying to treat this as a life raft or a lottery ticket or a way out. Now, you might be thinking, Miles, you just gave me a ton of reasons why this doesn't work. Can you give me a reason it does? And I'd be happy to do that, but it depends on a lot of variables. It depends on your application, your numbers, your goals, your timelines, and your family dynamics. And those are the questions that actually matter. The Calgary story is more of a case study, not a template. You need to look at your city rules, your equity, your rates, your kids' income, your timelines, all these different things. And if you want help mapping that all out for your specific situation, feasibility questions, carrying costs, whether a construction path or an equity takeout is right for you for working with this, there's a link below in the description. There's no pressure. It's all about clarity. It is a free consultation call. Click the link, book a time in the calendar, and we're happy to help out with that. And if you're sitting on a paid off or nearly paid off home and the backyard build is not the right move for you, but you still feel like your equity is frozen and you really want to help your kids, I broke down reverse mortgage math and why the real trap is idle equity in the video right on the screen here. It's essentially a different door to the same problem, deploying the asset without nuking the family plan. My name is Miles Nowik, owner of the Nowik Mortgage Team powered by Indy Mortgage. And if you got value out of this video, maybe hit that like and subscribe button so more people like you can see it, and we'll catch you on the next one.